what's going on? This is gonna be my short review of Palworld. Have I'm level 50. This is a dedicated server. I've been playing with some people, and I've pretty much got the full spectrum experience. I'm gonna go through the bases and kind of explain what's going on there, what I've seen, and what can be improved in terms of the game, in terms of one's gameplay, and how you can kind of navigate all that. So, I guess we'll have a look at this base first. Most of the best miners and overall workers are going to be Anubis. That's because they have this trait called Handiwork here, which is base level 4, and then they can also mine and they can transport, which means that technically if you leave them alone with food, they will be able to get metal, which is one of the main things that you're going to need in this game. It scales all the way to late game, so anything used with metal, that will scale all the way up to the final. And I'm going to go over to the next space, kind of have a look at the biggest issue I've seen so far when playing, and this is mainly caused by a bug. The issue is that the game does not run in all areas, and so unless you load the area, the dudes will just stop working. And so what happens here is, we can have a look at the box, is everybody has a certain problem with either their sanity or they're sick, and those purple tags on there just basically express that those mobs stacked on this PAL box right here, and then they either continuously got hungry or magically got diseases or something else. So basically what happens is, if you don't leave the game at this location, or there's nobody basically coming around this area, the mobs will just all stack on the PAL box and they won't do anything. And so this has been the biggest issue in the game. What most of the players have been doing is they'll leave the game, either leave their character in game, or they'll leave the game at one area, and that will still let the mobs around kind of do the things they need. So this base is completely abandoned. It was supposed to be my coal base, but I just stopped maintaining it since there's no point to do so. And we'll go back to the main base here, which is my starter one. And it turns out you don't really need to have full metal bases. You can, but you really want one area where you have enough space for at least 1 or 2 ranches, and you can really do this on a metal base. I just chose this one because I liked it. Metal income is necessary, so you do need to have your other 2 bases for ores, but this one works fine. You could technically move all this. It's all flat landed. The reason I did not structure up is because structuring up usually creates more problems than it helps. Things get stuck. You can see that especially big mobs will tend to get stuck in areas. So if you leave everything flat, you just put your ranches flat on the ground, it makes it much easier for the mobs to not get stuck. And I believe I have a Frostallion that's just, yeah. So this one, for example, keeps resetting. This is another bug that's quite annoying, is it's much less annoying with Frostallions, but he keeps coming out of the ranch, and so that basically is stopping production. And every time I need something to go here, this guy will just be over there. So best thing I usually do is to AFK in this base, and then I'll leave the game, which means that my character is still, for whatever reason, loading these guys. So they'll continue doing their stuff as regular, and they'll continue eating, but the other bases won't be the same, so I usually have to take everything out. So I would say that is my biggest issue with the game. It's not really something that they intended, so, and it might be something that's strictly more active on dedicated servers. On a single player it might behave differently, but I would say that is the biggest issue so far. Now, on the positives aspects of the game, this game plays really well throughout. I found a few annoying things. The main ones would be related to crafting, or things related to weapons, where some of the stuff doesn't always perform the way you would want it, but those things are really minor. Most of the gameplay is going to be through dealing damage and capturing, and most of that is going to be done through the pals. And so just throughout that aspect, I have found the game to be quite nice. There was an effigy bug, which made capturing much harder. I definitely recommend looking out for that, although I believe it's now completely fixed, so it should no longer be an issue. But yeah, aside from bugs and uses, most of the game just runs really well. And so I believe that once those bugs get fixed, the game will actually be almost in pristine condition, especially compared to other games out there. But also looking at it, it seems to me like, although I'm finished with the game, a new patch with new content would easily make this a replayable experience. You could even restart here and get something new going. But as far as it goes, it's quite nice. It does seem like the PvP aspect is going to lag behind, especially considering the fact that not only base building, but also the way that other mobs interact with the base tends to produce some. For example, just the Frost Stallions being able to leave the ranch. I've seen pals glitch through walls, up ceilings. Sometimes you'll find one that's at the church up here, even though he has no business being here. So you'll see a lot of stuff where that's probably in development. It might still be here and there, but I also found the fact that you can relog and use the pal box and drop balls, make it much easier to fix most of the ongoing problems and bugs or glitches. So in that sense, the game runs great. Now, what are some particular things that a new player might want to know? First thing is you usually want to have your ball income kind of set, and I think most people have reiterated this, but having a Vixie and then maybe potentially using this device right here, which is called the condenser, I believe. Yeah, condensation menu. So using condenser on your working pals is probably one good way to go. It will speed up their efficacy, and then you'll be able to get more of what you need. So the Vixies is going to be the best ball creation you can obtain, and that's pretty much going to give you full ball income for a while. So if you look at my things, right, I have 800 spheres. I can just throw them around. It doesn't matter. The second best way to get spheres, aside from crafting them or Vixies, is going to be chest runs. And the best chest runs I've seen, obviously anytime you see a chest, you should pick it up, but this area on the desert right here, once you're able to go through here with the shirts, there are plenty of chests you can find in the desert. It's usually completely open areas. Sometimes you'll have mobs there, humans attacking, but throughout this area, and then these areas right here, they're a little bit more difficult to access before late game. These areas have tremendous amounts of chests that you can just go in and pick up. You'll also find a couple of chests up here. There's usually 6 within the main island. The rest is scattered within the arcs. Same thing for the other islands. There's this one right here, and that one right here. Those have relatively good chests. And do note that this island at the south here is actually quite good for people that are trying to level, since most of the mobs are going to be around level 20, so that means with blue Vixie balls or green ones, you can mostly get what you need. The other two are much higher scaled, so this one up on the left is closer to 40, and then this one is 40s and 45, so that one you would be able to get some really nice stuff, but you do need up to, I would say, the pink balls would be a good place to start. So last before the legendary tier. And you can see most of the map is explored here. Obviously I made an effort to clear everything out. I do want to briefly talk about the last 2 bosses, since they did give me a hard time. I did this one solo, and I ended up breeding a Yormantide for this, which is somewhere up here. Let's have a quick look at him. This was the Yormantide I made, and that's considered perfect. Obviously, he's a little bit starred up. He has a little bit extra damage. But I actually found the Yormantides in general to be quite lacking. I like the Ignis a lot more, and the Ignis doesn't have stats like these. He doesn't have those passive skills. But something I found out throughout playing the game is that Fire Pals are not strong because there's 2 weaknesses to them. Fire Pals are strong because the Fire Dot is extremely potent, and it's very easy to get a really good one going. So this Blasphemous here was made by a friend who passed it on to me, and Blasphemous does better against most bosses, and that would be both tower bosses and the field bosses, like this Jet Dragon, are going to take more damage from Blasphemous simply because his base damage plus the Fire Dot are going to exceed something you'd come out of a Frost Stallion, even if Frost Stallion is quite perked up. Obviously this one's not starred up, but the point being, neither of them are starred up, but you would expect Frost Stallion to do more damage against a Jet Dragon, and that's not the case. The base damage just caps out really hard, so I would like to see potentially some changes to the way that critical damage effects either change the statuses or make it so that critical damage can either deal damage over time or crit harder, because as of right now it just seems like it's not really going there. And I've been made a point to not use weapons if possible, since they do just kind of change the overall dynamic of the game. I've mostly used Lily Spear. I found Lily Spear to be a really nice weapon. I think they should continue using melee weapons. This, however, does struggle to hit some of the flyers, so I think maybe a little bit more reach on these weapons would be quite nice. I do recommend the Stun Baton until you unlock Lily's Spear. It's going to be quite useful for getting most of the stuff either low or CC'd. It allows you to kind of get them ready for capture, so very nice. Another few ones that I would recommend is anything electric that's going to be a little bit higher tier. So I believe I've sold or gotten rid of most of them, but Beacon is definitely a really great one to use. You can hover down, you can use Shockwave, Lightning Sparks, all of those will do quite well at stunning and getting regular mobs low that you want to capture. And then after that, you have the other electric one, which is Univolt, and that's also what I used as my main dungeon mount. You usually want to reserve a slot for one flyer and one regular ground mount, so until you get to the very last tier where you can replace them with Frost Stallion and Jet Dragon, which are obviously like the end all of quality. Your Univolts, Beacon, and Fengalopes, which is right here, are going to be your best runners. Obviously, at early level, you're just looking at getting an Deer and a Nightwing with any kind of speed, and that would be your starter. But you're basically gradually going into this. The first thing that you're gonna really want to work on for eggs is going to be Anubis. Anubis has everything you need. He has tons of combinations, and his ability to do stuff around the base, especially his handiwork, is going to carry progress. You do not want to put points into stamina or work speed at all. Both of them are quite irrelevant as far as your main concern. The two things that are going to suffer from the most are weight and health. Health you can supplement with life pendants, and obviously you can use shirts on the other slot. It depends on what you're going through, but I recommend having a kind of active slot here. So this would be my default state, and then this is for frost, and this would be for fire. Maybe add a second shirt, and I'll swap these around depending on the circumstances. But you definitely want to have quite a bit of base health to be able to just do fights without having to worry about those. And then you do need around 1.5k weight just for handiwork as far as the current state. And obviously I do have a grappler, but the grappler is not consistent. You want to have as close to the regular weight that you have issues with, so that you will still be able to move at relative speed and you're not just spending time moving around. But do still use the grappler. As far as weapon evolving, I would recommend always starting with a melee weapon and just upgrading that regularly through. You're going to want a pickaxe and an axe, and you're going to want to upgrade those over time. Now, once you get closer to Lilith's Spear, you can use that instead of your regular axe, and at some point in time you won't need the pickaxe either, and you can drop that. As far as having a quick dig, if you need to get certain materials for whatever reason, I highly recommend having a dig toys just in your party. His combat stats are quite good, and you can use them to dig really quickly by using his active ability on the harness. And those can be found right here, so that would be Dicto's headband. You can also see here, I did not get all of the saddles, and the reason for that is because I find most of the saddles to actually not be necessary, and I would also cut out. I only use Vanworm here to go catch stuff, so you really don't need Vanworm. Your primary one's going to be Nightwing. You can use one before that as the mounted. I think the Deer is best, so you probably want to go Deer, Nightwing. Chillet is quite nice after that. You absolutely want Gale-Claw. Gale-Claw is the best glider you can use. I would not remove him out of your party until you get to the Giga Glider, which is going to be over level 30, around 40 probably. Dictoys is quite nice for digging if you need that. Then you probably want to upgrade to Univolt. After Univolt, you're probably looking at Fangalobe for your ground mount if you want to upgrade. If you don't, Univolt is quite good. He has really nice static attacks, so I don't recommend switching him out. Beacon is also going to be your main upgrade from Nightwing. He's huge, and then his abilities are quite nice for just regular all-around, either killing or taming. Then you're going to want to upgrade that into Phalaris. Phalaris is one of the greatest early mounts that you can get. I believe he's around level 30 and some. And by the time you can capture or egg a Phalaris and mount him, you're going to see a big difference with Beacon. So I definitely recommend it. I still used mine until the very end. and by using eggs to kind of perk up your Phalaris, you're going to be able to get one of the best characters until late game, right? And I would only switch him out really for something like Blasphemous, where that's going to be an upgrade. But aside from that, my Phalaris is pretty much on point with this type of damage, and he's fully starred up, so that's something I really recommend. And then as far as the last goes, you really don't need too many saddles. I do have Frost Stallion and Jet Dragon. These I would say are mandatory. Tide, not so much. You could probably craft one for Blasphemous if you're going to use that, and that's quite nice. But as far as the rest goes, I don't think you need that many saddles, so do save up your materials and points unless you really just want to check all of those out. Now, I do want to make an honorable mention to Lift Monk, which can do a lot of damage. So if you're feeling, building a Lift Monk, egging it up, and just putting that out, I don't think that's a bad idea. It actually does quite a significant amount of damage. The cooldown is higher, but I suppose with 2 Lift Monks, you could actually do a whole lot. It is a free gun, so I do recommend that one, although I don't use it myself. Now, for parties, there are a few strategies, but the general strategy is play the strongest, highest level thing you can get, and pretty much just use that to clear everything that's in your way, right? So we're talking about dungeons, bosses, field guides, like anything that needs to be cleared. You need something that's gonna punch, right? So obviously any of the stuff in my party has a significant amount of AoE and damage, so all of these guys can clear everything up to like the very last end game bosses, which would give them a hard time. So I do recommend having some variety in here. Sometimes you need to have one of each in order to make sure you're covering all the types. So this is pretty much what's going on here. And as far as it goes, yeah, so you only have 5 slots, which means you're gonna have to make some concessions. I do have a few honorable mentions in my list here. So most of the good ones, I would add Lylene, Orzerk, the Dark Frost Stallion, and Galewain to active parties. Those are obviously going to be great. And then when you're starting out, things like Bushi. I believe this one is Dinosaur. Any kind of rider that is quite fast, Syphilis and Anubis are going to be your go-tos until you get to a very stacked roster. So that is pretty much it. That's my review, so do what you would with it. And last thing, I guess I can have a quick cover on cakes. So cakes are going to cost eggs, milk, and honey, and then some flour. Flour can be obtained from wheat, and you can then put that wheat into the mill. The mill will run with planting, so whoever your watering guy who's watering the plants, in this case it would be this guy, will also run over here. And once you put in some wheat, which I don't have, it's not working properly right now, but I could probably go pick it up for demonstration. And you can see I have no wheat here, so I'm poor. So you would put the wheat into here, and then you would probably max this out. He'll walk over it and water it all the way. Then you would have your milk and eggs extra coming from the cows and chickens and pens. It's 4 pals per pen, so you're gonna see it's 4 here. I have a Vixie mixed in to get me some extra. And so you would then just put your cakes in here. They don't expire in the current version. It's possible they will expire later. You can make a fridge to get that kind of, and I need to get off this mount. The fridge can be found on this tab right here, and it's going to be pretty cheap. I don't use a fridge in the current version, but I do recommend you just put one around here. And you can just leave it there, maybe throw a nice pet at it so it can charge it in the meantime, but that's pretty much how it goes. Then you would put your egg in here. You're going to have a ranch that's on a clear area. You want a male and a female in there. Once you put one, it will be 1 cake to 1 egg ratio. And then you're just going to put your eggs in these, and you will just let them hatch. In terms of matching qualities, you usually want to try to do a 2 and 2. So these guys have 3 and 3, I believe, those are the best perks I had available. But your best bet would usually to look for something like this. For example, this guy has Serious Artisan. So if you want a perfect worker, you would try to look for Work Slave. and lucky on another guy, probably a female, and you would combine this male with that female, and that would give you the highest chance of having all 4 perks. And then once you have that 4 perker, you want to combine that 4 perker with another 2 perker or another 4 perker, and that will give you the highest chance of duplicating that perfect result that you got. So the way that this was obtained was pretty much by duplicating 2 perfect ones. So it wasn't the original, it was a copy. And the best way to make a copy is to use the best original with one of the progenitors, right? That has maybe only 2 or 3 of the perks, but this will eventually come out. That's pretty much my review on this game. I'd give it a 10 out of 10 if it was without the bugs. The bugs actually do make the gameplay quite a bit worse, but it's still very enjoyable, so I would say it's a 9 out of 10. There you go.